I will not marry your son. No matter what. I won't marry the chief's son. Ah!
Listen, come closer, let me tell you a story. A story about a girl who said no to the chief's son in front of the whole village and exposed a secret so dangerous, it almost destroyed two families. The entire village would never forget the day Amora stood in the village square and said the word that changed everything. No. That single word fell from her lips like a stone into still water, and the ripples spread across every corner of the village. Chief Emeka's face turned dark with anger. His wife, Madam Ifeoma, gasped as if Amora had slapped her. And Chinedu, the chief's son, the man everyone expected Amora to marry, stood frozen with his hand still stretched toward her, holding a golden bracelet that was supposed to seal their engagement. The entire village had gathered to witness what they thought would be the happiest moment of the year. Instead, they witnessed a rebellion. The silence that followed was thick and heavy, like the air before a terrible storm. Amora could feel hundreds of eyes burning into her skin. Old women whispered behind their hands. Young girls looked at her with confusion and fear. The men shook their heads slowly, as if she had just signed her own death sentence. Her mother, Adana, stood at the edge of the crowd, her face pale and twisted with an emotion that seemed more than disappointment. It was terror. But nobody understood why. Not yet. Something strange flickered in Madame Ifeoma's eyes too, a look that passed between her and Adana for just a moment before disappearing. Amora, Chief Emeka's voice boomed across the square, do you understand what you are doing? Do you know the honor my son is offering you? His words were calm, but underneath them, everyone heard the rumble of a volcano about to erupt. Amora lifted her chin higher, even though her legs trembled beneath her wrapper. I understand, Chief, she said, her voice somehow steady. But I cannot marry someone I do not love. I cannot marry Chinedu. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire that would soon consume everything. Chinedu's face changed from shock to anger, then to something that looked almost like hurt. But it was Chief Emeka who spoke next, his voice now cold as iron. You foolish girl. You dare insult my family in front of the entire village. He took a step toward her, and Amora's mother rushed forward, falling to her knees before the chief. Please, Chief Emeka, forgive her. She is young. She doesn't understand. But even as Adana begged, her hands shook with something more than fear. She glanced quickly at Madame Ifeoma again, and this time, tears filled her eyes. The chief raised his hand for silence. This girl has brought shame to my family. Let the village decide what happens to those who reject the chief's blessing. And with those words, Amora's nightmare truly began. Before we continue, please hit the subscribe button now. You don't want to miss what happens next. 3 weeks before that terrible day, Amora's life had been simple and peaceful. She woke each morning with the sun, helped her mother prepare breakfast, and then went to the market to sell the vegetables they grew in their small garden. Amora was known throughout the village as the girl with the kind heart and the beautiful smile. She helped elderly neighbors carry water from the well. She sang to children when they cried. She never spoke badly about anyone, and she worked harder than most girls her age. Her father, Obi, had died when she was just a baby, so it had always been just Amora and her mother against the world. That morning, Amora was at the market arranging fresh tomatoes in neat rows when she noticed someone watching her. She looked up and saw Chinedu, the chief's son, standing across the marketplace with 2 of his friends. He was tall and handsome, dressed in fine clothes that showed his family's wealth. Many girls in the village dreamed of catching his attention, but Amora had never been interested in such things. She smiled politely and returned to her work, thinking nothing of it. But Chinedu continued to stare, and his friends nudged him forward, whispering and laughing. Chinedu walked toward Amora's store, his expensive shoes clicking on the hard ground. Good morning, he said, his voice smooth and confident. You are Amora, daughter of Adana, correct? Amora nodded, wiping her hands on her wrapper. Yes, sir. Would you like to buy some vegetables? She kept her tone respectful but distant. Chinedu smiled, showing perfect white teeth. I'm not here for vegetables. I'm here because I've been watching you. You're different from other girls. You have something special. Amora felt uncomfortable under his gaze. Thank you, sir, but I should get back to work. She turned away, hoping he would leave. But Chinedu didn't leave. Instead, he laughed softly. I like that you're not like the others, throwing themselves at me. That's exactly why I've decided you will be my wife. Amora's heart stopped. She turned back to face him, sure she had misheard. Excuse me. Chinedu's smile widened. I've told my father about you. We'll begin the marriage arrangement soon. You should prepare yourself and your mother. This is a great honor for your family. Before Amora could respond, before she could say that she didn't want this honor, Chinedu turned and walked away, leaving her standing there with her mouth open and her heart racing with fear. That was the moment Amora's peaceful life began to crumble. Within 2 days, the entire village knew about Chinedu's intentions. Everywhere Amora went, people congratulated her. Old women grabbed her hands and told her how lucky she was. Young girls looked at her with envy and whispered among themselves. Even the men at the market treated her differently, with more respect, as if she had already become the chief's daughter-in-law. But Amora felt sick to her stomach. She hadn't agreed to anything. She barely knew Chinedu. How could everyone assume her life had already been decided? At home, things became even stranger. Amora's mother, Adana, received a visit from Madame Ifoma herself, the chief's wife. Amora listened from behind the curtain as the two women sat in their small living room. Your daughter has been chosen for a great honor, Madame Ifoma said, her voice tight and strange. My son wants to marry her. The chief has approved. We will begin the ceremonies next month. There was a long pause. When Adana finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Madam, perhaps there is another girl who would be better suited for your son. Madam Ifeoma's response was sharp and cold. Are you rejecting this proposal, Adana? Do you know what that would mean for you and your daughter? Another pause. Then Amora heard something that made her blood run cold, the sound of her mother crying. Not sad crying, but the desperate, terrified crying of someone trapped in a cage. No, madam, Adana said through her tears. I'm not rejecting it. I just need time to prepare Amora. She's still so young. Madam Ifeoma stood to leave. You have 1 week to prepare her. After that, the formal proposal will happen in the village square. Make sure she says yes, Adana. For both your sakes. After Madam Ifeoma left, Amora came out from behind the curtain. Her mother sat on the floor, her face buried in her hands, her whole body shaking. Mama, what's wrong? Amora knelt beside her, touching her shoulder gently. Why are you so afraid? Adana looked up, and Amora saw something in her mother's eyes she had never seen before: guilt. Deep, terrible guilt mixed with fear. You must marry him, Amora, her mother whispered. You must say yes when the chief asks. Please, my daughter. Don't ask me why. Just trust me. You must marry Chinedu. But Amora shook her head slowly. Mama, I don't love him. I don't even know him. How can you ask me to spend my whole life with a stranger? Her mother grabbed Amora's hand so tightly it hurt. Some things are more important than love, my child. Some secrets, some mistakes from the past, they follow us forever. Please, Amora. Please don't refuse him. Amora pulled her hands away, confusion and anger rising in her chest. What secrets, Mama? What are you talking about? But Adana only turned away and wouldn't say another word. That night, Amora lay awake, wondering what terrible secret could make her mother so afraid. She had no idea that the truth was far worse than anything she could imagine. The next few days felt like walking through a nightmare. Everywhere Amara went, the pressure grew heavier. Women who had once been kind to her now gave her cold looks when she mentioned having doubts. "Ungrateful girl," one old woman muttered loudly enough for Amara to hear. "The chief's son chooses her, and she thinks she's too good for him." The young men in the village began to treat Amara differently too, keeping their distance, as if she already belonged to Chinedu and was forbidden territory. The weight of everyone's expectations pressed down on Amara's shoulders like a heavy stone. Amara tried to speak to her best friend, Chinyu, hoping for support. But even Chinyu seemed different. They sat by the river where they had played as children, and Amara poured out her heart. "I don't want to marry him, Chinyu. I want to choose my own husband someday, someone I love." "Is that so wrong?" Chinyu looked uncomfortable, playing with the edge of her wrapper. "Amara, think about your mother. Think about your family. The chief's favor could change your whole life. You'd never be poor again. You'd never struggle. Why would you throw that away?" Amara felt her heart break a little. "So even you think I should do it? Even you don't understand?" Chinyu stood up, brushing dirt from her clothes. "I understand that in this village, we don't always get to choose our own path. We do what our families need us to do. That's how it works, Amara. That's how it's always worked." She walked away, leaving Amara sitting alone by the river, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in her life, Amara felt completely alone. Even the people who loved her couldn't understand why she wanted to choose her own future. The whole world seemed to be against her. That evening, Chief Emeka himself came to their small house. Amara's mother nearly fainted when she saw him at the door. The chief was a large man with a deep voice and eyes that seemed to see through everything. He sat in their best chair while Amara and her mother stood nervously before him. "Amara," he said, his voice filling the small room, "my son has chosen you. This is not something that happens to every girl. Do you understand the honor being given to your family?" Amara swallowed hard, her mouth dry. "Yes, chief. But with respect, the chief raised his hand, cutting her off. "I didn't come here to debate. I came to tell you that the formal proposal will happen in 3 days in the village square. You will say yes. This is not a request." He stood and looked at Amara's mother with an expression that made her shrink back. "Make sure she understands, Adana. Make sure she doesn't disgrace your family." And then he was gone, leaving behind a silence that felt like death itself. After the chief's visit, Amara's mother became like a ghost in their own home. She barely ate. She barely slept. She spent hours staring at nothing, her eyes red from crying. Amara tried again and again to understand what was happening. "Mama, please tell me why you're so afraid. What hold does the chief's family have over us?" But Adana would only shake her head and whisper, "You don't understand, child. You can't understand. Just do as they say, and everything will be all right." But Amara couldn't let it go. She began to notice strange things. One afternoon, she found her mother looking at an old photograph, something Amara had never seen before. In the photo was a young Adana, smiling and beautiful, standing next to a handsome man. Amara's father, Obi. But there was something else in the photo that made Amara's heart skip. In the background, barely visible, was a young Madam Ifeoma, also smiling, looking at Obi with an expression that seemed too intense. Too personal. "Mama, who is that?" Amara pointed at the figure in the background. Her mother snatched the photo away so quickly it tore at the corner. "No one. Just someone from long ago. Don't ask about things that don't concern you." The next day, Amara went to visit old Mama Nechi, the village's oldest woman and keeper of stories. If anyone knew the secrets of the village's past, it would be her. Amora found her sitting under her favorite tree, weaving a basket. Mama Nkechi, Amora said respectfully, sitting beside her, can I ask you about the past? About my father and the chief's family. The old woman's hand stopped moving. She looked at Amora with eyes that had seen many years and many secrets. Child, why do you dig in soil that should remain covered? But Amora pressed on. Please, Mama. I need to know. Why is everyone so afraid? Why does my mother cry every night? Mama Nkechi was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke, her voice low and careful. Your father, Obi, was a good man. A kind man. Before he married your mother, there was another woman who loved him. A woman who was promised to someone else, someone powerful. That woman's heart broke when Obi chose your mother instead. Amora's breath caught. Who was the woman? But Mama Nkechi shook her head. Some stories are dangerous to tell, child. Some truths can destroy families. All I can say is this, the past has a way of reaching into the present. And sometimes, the sins of yesterday become the chains of today. She wouldn't say anything more, no matter how much Amora begged. That night, Amora couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed, her mind racing with pieces of a puzzle she couldn't quite fit together. Her father had been loved by another woman. That woman had been forced to marry someone powerful. Madame Ifeoma had looked at her father with strange intensity in that old photograph. And now, Madame Ifeoma's son wanted to marry Amora. It didn't make sense. Or did it? Amora felt like she was standing at the edge of a great cliff, about to discover something terrible. She just didn't know yet how terrible it would be. Tomorrow was the day of the proposal. Tomorrow, she would have to give her answer. And deep in her heart, Amora knew that no matter what secrets lay buried in the past, she could not marry Chinedu. She would rather face the village's anger than live a lie. The morning of the proposal arrived with clear skies and bright sunshine, as if the weather itself was mocking Amora's dark mood. Her mother dressed her in the finest wrapper they owned, tears streaming down her face as she walked. Please, Amora, Adana whispered for the 100th time. Please don't do this. Say yes. I'm begging you. But Amora remained silent, her jaw set with determination. She didn't understand all the secrets yet, but she understood one thing clearly: her life belonged to her, not to the chief, not to Chinedu, and not even to her mother's mysterious fears. The village square filled with people long before the appointed time. Everyone wanted to witness the great moment when the chief's son would officially claim his bride. Drummers played joyful rhythms. Women ululated in celebration. Children ran through the crowd, excited by the festive atmosphere. A special chair had been set up for Amora, decorated with flowers and fine cloth. Chief Emeka sat on his large throne, looking proud and powerful. Beside him sat Madame Ifeoma, her face painted with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And next to her stood Chinedu, dressed in the finest robes, looking every bit the confident prince claiming his prize. Amora was led to her decorated chair by her mother, whose hand trembled as she held Amora's arm. As they walked through the crowd, Amora noticed something strange. Madame Ifeoma was staring at her mother with an expression that was part anger, part fear, and part something else, something that looked almost like guilt. When their eyes met, Madame Ifeoma quickly looked away. Amora's mother's grip tightened on her arm, and Amora heard her whisper something under her breath that sounded like a prayer. Or maybe a plea for forgiveness. Finally, the moment arrived. Chief Emeka stood, and the drums fell silent. Today, he announced in his booming voice, we gather to celebrate the union of two families. My son, Chinedu, has chosen Amora, daughter of Adana, to be his wife. This is a great honor for her family and a blessing for our village. The crowd cheered. Chinedu stepped forward, that golden bracelet gleaming in his hand. He walked to where Amora sat and knelt before her, his smile confident and sure. "Amora," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "will you accept my proposal? Will you become my wife and join my family?" The entire village held its breath, waiting for the answer everyone expected. But Amora stood slowly, her heart pounding but her mind clear, and spoke the word that would change everything. "No." The days following Amora's refusal were the darkest of her life. The village that had once loved her now turned against her with a fury that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than simple disappointment. Women spat on the ground when she passed. Children threw stones at her house at night. The market sellers refused to buy vegetables from her mother, leaving them with no way to earn money. Anonymous voices shouted insults in the darkness, "Ungrateful girl. Foolish child. You'll regret your pride." It was as if Amora had committed a crime against the entire village, not just refused a marriage proposal. Her mother stopped speaking to her almost completely. Adana moved through their house like a ghost, her eyes hollow with fear and something that looked like despair. One night, Amora heard her mother praying, or was it crying, in her room, saying words that made no sense. "Forgive me, Obi. Forgive me for what I knew. Forgive me for what I allowed. Your daughter is paying for my silence." Amora stood outside the door, her hand raised to knock, wanting to understand, wanting to help. But something in her mother's voice, something broken and lost, stopped her. Whatever secrets her mother carried, they were destroying her from the inside. The worst came when 3 village elders visited their home, their faces grave and angry. "Amora," the oldest one said, his voice hard as stone, "you have insulted the chief's family. You have brought shame to this village. We are here to tell you that unless you change your mind and accept Shinidu's proposal, you and your mother will be banished. You will lose your home, your land, everything. You have 3 days to decide." The words hit like physical blows. Banishment meant death in many ways, cast out with nowhere to go, no protection, no community. Amora looked at her mother, expecting her to argue, to defend them. But Adana said nothing. She only stared at the floor, defeated. After the elders left, Amora finally broke. She grabbed her mother's shoulders, forcing her to look up. "Mama, please. What is happening? Why won't you fight for us? What secret are you hiding that's worth more than our lives?" And for the first time, Adana's face crumpled completely. She pulled Amara close, holding her tight, and whispered in a voice filled with anguish, "I can't tell you, my daughter. If the truth comes out, it will destroy more than just us. It will destroy families. It will destroy reputations. It will break the chief himself. Some secrets are too dangerous to speak." But Amora pulled back, tears streaming down her face. "Then let them be destroyed. I won't marry someone I don't love to protect people who are threatening to destroy us." Her mother's eyes widened with terror. "Don't say that. Please, Amora. You don't know what you're asking for." But Amora's mind was made up. If the truth was so terrible, then maybe it needed to come out. Maybe that was the only way to be free. On the second day before the deadline, something unexpected happened. Amora woke to find her mother gone. Panic seized her heart as she searched their small house, calling for Adana. She ran outside and saw a crowd gathering in the village square. Fear gripped her as she rushed toward them, pushing through the people until she reached the center. And there stood her mother, facing Chief Emeka, Madam Ifeoma, and Chinedu. Adana's face was different, no longer afraid, but filled with a terrible, desperate courage. "I cannot stay silent anymore," Adana's voice rang out across the square. "You want to know why my daughter refuses Chinedu? I'll tell you why. I'll tell you the truth that has been buried for 20 years. Madam Ifeoma's face went white as death. She stood suddenly, her hands trembling. "Adana, no. Please. Think about what you're doing. But Adana ignored her, turning to face the gathered crowd. Before Chief Emeka married Madam Ifeoma, she was in love with my husband, Obi. She begged him to run away with her, but Obi chose me instead. Her father forced her to marry the chief for wealth and status, but her heart never let go. The crowd gasped, whispers spreading like wildfire. Chief Emeka's face turned dark with confusion and growing anger. "What are you talking about, woman? What does old gossip have to do with now?" But Adana wasn't finished. Her voice grew stronger, louder, as if years of silence were finally breaking free. "After she married you, Chief, Madam Ifeoma continued to meet with my husband in secret. For months, she pursued him, even though he rejected her each time. But one night, when I was away visiting my sick mother, she convinced him. Just once. One terrible mistake that Obi regretted for the rest of his short life. Madam Ifeoma let out a sound like a wounded animal. She tried to speak, but no words came. Chinedu stared at his mother, his face frozen in shock. Chief Emeka stood slowly, his massive frame trembling. "What are you saying?" His voice was barely a whisper now, all the power drained from it. Adana turned to him, tears streaming down her face but her voice steady. "I'm saying that Chinedu is not your son, Chief Emeka. He is the son of my late husband, Obi. Chinedu and Amora share the same father. They are brother and sister." The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved. No one breathed. The truth hung in the air like a knife, sharp and terrible and impossible to take back. Then, like a wave crashing on shore, the reality hit everyone at once. Chinedu staggered backward, his face twisted with horror and disbelief. Madam Ifeoma collapsed to her knees, not with remorse, but with the terror of exposure. And Chief Emeka, the powerful, mighty chief who had ruled the village for decades, stood frozen, his world crumbling around him. The village square erupted into chaos. Women screamed. Men shouted accusations. Chinedu fell to the ground, his hands covering his face, making sounds of pure anguish. Chief Emeka's legs gave way, and he collapsed onto his throne, his hand clutching his chest. For a moment, Amora thought he might die right there. His face had turned grey, his eyes wide with betrayal and shock. The mighty chief, who had terrified everyone with his power, now looked like a broken old man, destroyed by the truth of his wife's ancient deception. Madam Ifeoma crawled toward the chief on her knees, reaching for him, her fine clothes dragging in the dust. "My husband, please. Please listen. It was so long ago. I was young and foolish. I never meant," but Chief Emeka pulled away from her touch as if she were poison. "Don't speak to me," he said, his voice hoarse and broken. "Don't ever speak to me again." He looked at Chinedu, the young man he had raised as his son, trained as his heir, loved with all his heart. "Is this true? Are you not my blood?" Chinedu looked up, tears streaming down his face, and the pain in his eyes was answer enough. The chief turned away, unable to bear the sight. Amora's mother walked to where Amora stood at the edge of the crowd. She pulled her daughter close, holding her tight. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was afraid. Afraid of this moment. Afraid of the pain it would cause. But I couldn't let you marry your own brother. I couldn't let that happen, no matter the cost." Amora held her mother, feeling the weight of years of secret pain flowing out of her. "Why did you protect her secret for so long?" Amora whispered. Her mother looked back at Madam Ifeoma, who sat in the dust, abandoned and exposed. "Because Obi asked me to. Before he died, he made me promise. He said the truth would destroy too many innocent people. But he never imagined this. He never imagined his own children might." The elders who had threatened Amora with banishment now looked at her with different eyes, with respect, even with shame. They approached Chief Emeka carefully. "Chief, what should be done?" one of them asked. The chief didn't answer for a long time. He stared at Madame Ifeoma with eyes that held no love anymore, only betrayal and disgust. Finally, he spoke, his voice empty and cold. Take her to the old house at the edge of the village. She is no longer my wife. She is nothing to me. As for the boy, he looked at Chinedu, and for just a moment, love flickered in his eyes before dying. He may stay or go. I can no longer call him my son, but I will not cast him out. The sins of the mother are not his to bear. In the weeks that followed, the village slowly absorbed the shock. Madame Ifeoma lived alone in the small house, shunned by everyone, her wealth and status stripped away. She never showed true remorse, only anger at being discovered, only bitterness at losing her comfortable life. She blamed everyone but herself, claiming she had been the victim of circumstance. The village turned away from her completely. Chinedu disappeared for many days. When he returned, he was changed, quieter, sadder, but perhaps wiser. He came to Amara one evening and spoke to her for the first time since the truth came out. I'm sorry, Chinedu said simply, his proud confidence replaced with humility. I never knew. If I had known, I would never. I thought I was doing you an honor. I see now that I was only thinking of what I wanted, not what you wanted. Amara looked at her half-brother, this stranger who shared her blood, and felt pity rather than anger. You didn't know, she said softly. Neither of us knew. The sins were committed by others, not by us. Chinedu nodded slowly. What will you do now? Amara looked toward the horizon, toward the world beyond the village that had tried to control her. I'm going to leave. My mother and I are going to the city. We are going to start again, where no one knows our story. Where I can choose my own path. 3 days later, as the sun rose over the village, Amara and her mother walked down the dusty road, carrying small bags with all their possessions. They didn't look back. Behind them, the village slowly returned to normal, though nothing would ever truly be the same. Chief Emeka began the long, painful process of accepting that the life he thought he had lived was built on lies. The village learned that secrets, no matter how carefully buried, eventually find their way to the light. And somewhere in that village, young girls heard Amora's story and learned that sometimes saying no takes more courage than anyone can imagine. Years later, travelers would sometimes bring news of a young woman and her mother who had built a successful business in the city. They said the young woman had married for love, on her own terms. They said she was happy, free from the chains of other people's expectations and other people's secrets. The village elders would nod and remember the girl who refused to marry the chief's son. They would remember the day the truth broke free like a flood. And they would tell the story to their children as a lesson, not about obedience, but about courage. About the power of speaking truth even when the whole world wants you to stay silent. Amara had lost a village, but she had gained her freedom. And in the end, that was worth everything. If this story is interesting, kindly subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories.